I didn't need you, he said. I replied. That success cost me. Pai que deu tudo pelo filho, e isso acabou custando muito caro, além do sucesso também a saúde. Hook, he said it without looking at me. Not cruel, almost casual. I didn't need you. We were standing in a hospital corridor that smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. My arm was still sore from the needle. My chest felt hollow, like something vital had already been removed, and no one had bothered to tell me. He was holding his phone, scrolling. A suit that fit him perfectly. The kind I used to imagine he'd wear one day. I tried to breathe slowly, because that's what the nurse had told me to do earlier. Slow breaths, no stress. I laughed once, a sound I didn't recognize as my own. That success you're proud of, I said quietly. It cost me more than you think. He finally looked up then, and in his eyes, I realized the damage was already done. Context. Before all of that, my life was small and repetitive in a way I didn't resent. I woke up early, always before the sun, because my body learned that habit long before I understood why. Coffee, the same chipped mug. A quiet kitchen. The kind of quiet that only exists when you're the only adult left carrying the weight of a household. I raised him alone from the time he was still learning how to tie his shoes. His mother didn't disappear dramatically. There was no shouting, no slammed doors. She just left one afternoon and never fully came back. Some people leave like that. Not as villains, just as absences that slowly become permanent. So it was me and him. School runs, doctor appointments, homework at the kitchen table while I pretended not to be exhausted. I worked whatever jobs were available, sometimes two at once. Nothing impressive, nothing that would ever turn heads. But it paid for books, shoes, and later, tutors, when I realized he was smarter than I'd ever been. I told myself this was temporary. That sacrifice was a phase. That once he made it, I'd finally rest. I skipped meals without calling it that, ignored pain because there was always something more urgent. A deadline, a bill, a future that depended on me staying upright. When my chest tightened at night, I sat still until it passed. When my hands shook, I blamed the coffee. He grew fast, taller than me by 16, confident, focused. Teachers praised him, relatives admired him. They used words like self-made early on, and I let them. I never corrected anyone. I thought my role was to disappear quietly once the foundation was built. We didn't talk much about feelings. We talked about results, grades, opportunities. What came next? I thought that was love, making sure the path ahead of him was clear, even if mine was narrowing. By the time his success started becoming real, awards, interviews, attention, my body was already betraying me in ways I didn't fully acknowledge. I told myself I'd deal with it later, after the next milestone, after the next win. I truly believed there would be time. Central incident. The first real warning came on a morning that should have been ordinary. I was tying my shoes when the room tilted just slightly, like a picture frame knocked out of alignment. I sat down on the edge of the bed and waited for it to pass. It didn't. I still went to work. That's the part people never understand later. They ask why I didn't stop, why I didn't see a doctor sooner, why I didn't slow down. But stopping felt irresponsible. Slowing down felt like failure. Everything in my life had been built on endurance, and endurance doesn't come with an off switch. Around that same time, his life accelerated. A real offer. Not a dream anymore, not a maybe, a contract, a future with numbers attached to it. He called me that night, voice tight with excitement, already speaking faster than usual. I did it, he said. I actually did it. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, the same one where we'd done homework for years, my left arm aching in a dull, persistent way. I told him I was proud. I meant it. The word felt earned. He started traveling. Meetings, long calls, new people. I listened more than I spoke. I didn't want to burden him with small complaints. Fatigue, headaches, the way my vision sometimes blurred at the edges. Compared to what he was building, my body felt like a minor inconvenience. Then, one afternoon, I collapsed in a grocery store aisle. Not dramatically, no cinematic fall, just my knees giving up while I reached for a carton of milk. I woke up under fluorescent lights, a stranger's face hovering above me, someone saying my name because my wallet had told them what to call me. The diagnosis came in pieces: tests, waiting rooms, words spoken gently, which is how you know they're bad. Stress-related. Advanced. Preventable, if caught earlier. That phrase stuck with me. If caught earlier. As if time were something I'd misplaced. I didn't tell him right away. I waited until after his first big public success. The article, the photos, his smile printed on glossy paper. He called me, breathless, asking if I'd seen it. I saw it, I said. You look good. When I finally told him about the hospital, about the treatment plan, about how things would change, there was a pause on the line. Not long, just enough. You'll be fine, he said. You're strong. You always handle things. I realized then that strength, to him, had become invisible. Automatic. Something expected, not acknowledged. The point of no return wasn't the diagnosis itself. It was the moment I understood that the role I'd played my whole life, the provider, the absorber, the silent foundation, had taught him something I never intended. That I was optional. And once that understanding settled in, nothing could undo it. Escalation recovery didn't look the way people imagine. There was no clean line between sick and better, no triumphant return to normal. There were days when I felt almost functional, and others when just standing up felt like negotiating with gravity. I stopped working first. Not because I wanted to, but because my body made the decision for me. The jobs that had once tolerated my exhaustion now required explanations I didn't have the energy to give. Bills stacked up in a neat, accusing pile on the counter. I handled them slowly, carefully, like fragile objects. He sent money. Regularly. Efficiently. No conversation attached. At first I told myself that was enough, that this was just another phase, that once things stabilized, we'd talk again the way we used to. But our calls became shorter. Updates instead of conversations. Logistics instead of life. How are you feeling? He'd ask. Managing, I'd answer. It was the truth, but also a shield. I watched his world expand from a distance. New apartment, new circles, new confidence. He spoke with certainty now, the kind that comes from being listened to. I was proud of him in a quiet, aching way. But I also felt myself shrinking, becoming a footnote to a story I'd helped write. My health demanded more attention than I could give. Appointments multiplied, medications changed, side effects layered on top of symptoms until I wasn't always sure which part of me was failing. I learned the sound of hospital hallways at different times of day. The echo of my own footsteps when no one walked beside me. When I finally asked him to come with me to an appointment, just once, he hesitated. I heard it in the silence before he spoke. I've got something important that day, he said. Can we reschedule? We never did. That was when resentment started creeping in. Not as anger, but as fatigue. The deep kind that settles into your bones. I didn't blame him outright. I blamed the timing, the pressure, the fact that success doesn't wait for anyone. especially not for the people who made it possible. But resentment has a way of clarifying things. It forced me to look honestly at what I'd built between us. I had taught him to focus forward, to prioritize results, to treat personal limits as obstacles to overcome. I had modeled that behavior with my own body, again and again. Now my body was asking for mercy, and the language we shared had no word for that. By the time the doctors started talking about long-term impact, about what would never fully recover, his career had reached a point where slowing down felt impossible to him. And I understood that. What I didn't understand yet was how much that understanding would cost me. Because the more I tried to stay out of his way, the more I disappeared from his life. And disappearing, I learned, is a skill you don't forget once you've mastered it. Climax. He arrived late, the way people do when their lives are moving faster than the places they're forced to stop. The hospital corridor was quiet, almost empty, just the hum of lights and the squeak of shoes somewhere far away. I'd been sitting there long enough to memorize the pattern on the floor. He hugged me, quick and careful, like he was afraid of knocking something loose. I told him what the doctors had said this time, not with drama, just facts, numbers, limitations, words like permanent and management and adjustment. I watched his face while I spoke, the way his attention stayed intact but never fully settled. He nodded, said he was sorry, said we'd figure something out. Then he checked his phone. That was when something in me shifted. Not anger, not sadness, just a tired precision. "You don't really hear this anymore, do you?" I said. He looked up, surprised. "Hear what?" "How bad it's been. How long it's been bad." He exhaled, rubbed his jaw the way he does when he's choosing his words carefully. "I just don't think it helps to dwell on the past," he said. "I mean, you chose to push yourself. I never asked you to do all that." The sentence sat between us, clean and sharp. I waited. Part of me still expected him to take it back, to soften it. He didn't. "I didn't need you to give up your whole life," he added. "I did this on my own." There it was, the version of the story he'd been living with. I stood up slowly, feeling the familiar pull in my chest, the warning my body always gave me now. I didn't rush. This was not a moment that needed speed. "That success," I said, keeping my voice low, steady, "didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of nights I didn't sleep, jobs I didn't leave, pain I ignored. It came out of a body I spent like it was renewable." He opened his mouth, then closed it. "I don't need gratitude," I continued, "and I don't need guilt. But don't rewrite me out of it just because it makes your life cleaner." For the first time since he'd arrived, he looked uncomfortable. Not defensive, exposed. "I didn't mean—" he started. "I know what you meant," I said. "You meant you survived without having to look back." The silence after that felt final. Not dramatic, just complete. Like a door closing all the way, not slamming, just clicking into place. He nodded once, a small movement, acknowledgement without agreement. When he left, I stayed seated. I listened to his footsteps fade, counted them without realizing I was doing it. By the time the corridor was quiet again, I knew something irreversible had happened. Not between us alone. Inside me. That was the moment I stopped carrying the weight, quietly. Not by handing it to him, but by finally setting it down. Resolution. After that, life didn't fall apart. It simplified. He kept his distance, and I respected it. There were messages on holidays, short calls on birthdays, the kind of contact that proves nothing is wrong while confirming nothing is close. I stopped waiting for the sound of his voice the way I used to. Waiting had become another form of strain. My health settled into a pattern I could manage if I listened carefully. I learned to measure days by what my body allowed, not by what I wished it would. Some mornings I felt almost normal. Other afternoons I lay still, breathing shallow, letting time pass without fighting it. I sold the house. Too many stairs, too many echoes. I moved into a smaller place where everything I needed was within reach. Less space meant fewer reminders of who I used to be. I think about him often, but not with the ache people expect. More like checking a scar, proof that something happened, not something still happening. I see his success from afar sometimes. An article, a photograph. He looks certain, grounded. I hope that certainty never asks more from him than he can afford. We never revisited that conversation. We didn't need to. Some truths don't require agreement to be real. They just exist, heavy and unmoving. I don't regret the choices I made. Regret suggests there was an alternative version of me that would have walked away sooner. There wasn't. There was only the man who believed responsibility meant endurance, and love meant silence. What remains now is quieter than loss. It's memory. It's consequence. It's a life reduced to what can be carried without harm. When I say his success cost me my health, I don't say it to accuse him. I say it because naming the truth is the last responsibility I still keep. And this time, I keep it for myself.